Welcome to yet another juicy, red-hot, sizzling Kings of War tournament report, this time from The Coming Storm. And to guide you through this educational and hopefully entertaining process, here I am in the corner of the screen in all my glory with my wonderful wind-swept hair that cannot be tamed. No product has been invented. So, I've got my army list right here to hand. I've got my results sheet currently on the floor because I've run out of space around me, and we're going to dive straight into The Coming Storm. So, League of Rhordia on the table again, another tournament, not vastly different list to what I've been running recently, but there are a couple of differences. If you've been watching my battle reports, in fact if you saw the last one that went up yesterday, then the list is very, very similar to that. I didn't want to put that battle report up earlier because it would give away too many of my tactics, and as we know, I would never do that. I would never analyse all my games after the fact and then tell everyone precisely how to beat me. That would be crazy. So let's look at the first image, shall we? So you can have a look at the battlefield. Now, first of all, at this event there was a lot of traffic, there were some accidents on the roads apparently, so quite a few people were late. And I was one of the two latest people to arrive, so because of that we got matched up in the first round, which kind of messed up the draw that happened beforehand to get matches going, which meant that I ended up facing the army that may look very familiar to you if you watched my last battle report. So this is going to be two tournaments in a row where the player I faced in my last practice game before the tournament, I then immediately faced at the start of the tournament. So we'll see how this one goes. And any interesting rules for this tournament. The scoring, the way the tournament scoring works is quite interesting. So 15 points for a win, 10 for a draw, 5 for a loss, and then up to 5 based on how much of your opponent's army you kill, and then an extra 5 available based on how many victory points you got in the scenario as well. So even if you're losing the scenario and you can jump on an objective at the end, you might as well go for it because that's going to get you an extra tournament point as well. So up to 25 points per game at maximum. So let's go through my list. Actually, it's push scenario first, I'll tell you that. So you're going to notice that there are some tokens on some of the units. We'll just go through the units here as my deployment dictates. So we've got the Duke on Winged Arrowles right there on the right, and he's got the Blade of Slashing now. Then we have the Honor Guard, the horde of those with the Potion of the Caterpillar still. I think that's too important to leave off them. Then we've got some Halfling Scouts there next to one of the volley guns. There's going to be 3 of those. We've got some allied Soul Reaver Cavalry, who of course can't take artifacts because they're allies and I've got nothing to inspire them with, but I'm hoping that the punch that they pack will be enough to tip this army over the edge into something that's actually going to do a lot of killing and hopefully win some games. Then we've got the first of the Spearling regiments there, and you can see more Spearlings on the far left of the screen as well. There is the Spearling formation, which is we've had a second breakfast, which is very well costed considering it gives them all ensnare, all the Spearlings and the Master Sergeant, who you can see standing on the left to the right of the Spearling unit there, and puts the Spearlings up to defense 4 as well. So stealthy ensnaring units, pretty tough to take down. And the Master Sergeant's very handy as well. 2 more volley guns in there, so you can see all the volley guns overlooking the centre. Now, those 2 on the left are actually perched on that hill, which is very nice, and it was my opponent actually who chose sides, and I don't think the other side had a hill in the deployment zone. So I definitely would have chosen this side for that reason, because they're kind of the perfect units to put on top of that hill. They're going to be able to hopefully shoot over combat that's going on in front of them because they're overlooking the area where the central objective is. Because you have 1 objective in the centre, 1 token, and then you start off with 2 on your own units, basically. And you want to get them into the enemy half of the table at the end while holding them. So you can see the Iron Beast there, and he's really the perfect model to be carrying the loot tokens, or the push tokens in this case, because he's already speed 5, so not being slowed down. Defense 6, good nerve, hard to kill. So a good candidate for carrying tokens there. And as we move further across, you can see that was the horde of Spearlings in the middle there, and the regiment is to the left of them, with the army standard bearer behind. He's a human standard bearer, so he can inspire everything apart from allies, obviously. So he can inspire Honor Guard if he ends up near them, which he doesn't often. But he's in there for that reason, just in case he's needed for that role. And he's got the Loot of Insatiable Darkness to give a bit more hitting power generally to the horde of spearlings. I usually put him around them. Then we've got a horde of archers out there, and they're kind of stuck out on their own at the end, and there's a big piece of impassable terrain in front of them, I think. So they're not hugely influential if you just look at the deployments. They're not in a very good position, but I was running out of space and I didn't want to just pile up archers behind other units. It can work sometimes, but in this instance I thought they'd be alright out there on the flank, because there are some units for them to contend with over there. So, onto the enemies now. We've got the orcs, we've got some skulks in the woods there, and some gore riders. And in fact, I'm going to just open up my opponent's army list right here so I can tell you what items they have, because this is well planned. So the gore riders don't have any items on them. And moving along, we've got 2 hordes of Great Axe, which are the crushing strength 2 orc units. They're only defense 4 though, so big hitty walls of death, and there's just so much meat in there. Those 2 big hordes, there's a troll horde right behind them as well. And I think there are some items on these. One of them has the Chalice of Wrath, one of them has the Helm of Confidence, so that makes them a little bit harder to stop in their tracks. And the trolls, they have the Staying Stone, which is a handy one for trolls because it brings their nerve more in line with what you would expect for a unit, because they do have quite a big gap between waver and rout value. So there's a war drum behind one of the hordes there. There's Gakamak, there's a God Speaker, I think it's just one, and he's got some healing abilities. There's another war drum on the left, the one on each side there, and there is a standard bearer, a flagger, and he doesn't seem to have any items. And there is a Crudger on a slasher somewhere around here, and there is next to the other gore riders, so that is on the right flank as I look out across the battlefield. So turn 1. And my opponent, I believe, elected to go first, so you can see the token in the centre there. That's the one that he's going to want to pick up. I believe he's got his push tokens, 1 on each of those hordes. So my plan, really, I want to just get stuck in the centre and kind of get a bit of a fight going in the middle. Because I've got not quite the speed edge overall, but I have got some of my most hard-hitting units are faster than his infantry and the trolls. So I'm hoping I'll be able to get some good hits in there. The cavalry and the Crudger are a bit more concerning because they're faster than most of what I've got. But if I can get it into a fight in the middle, I'm going to have the ability to shoot over that with my volley guns. They're going to be able to ignore pretty much all these units in terms of cover for what's behind. So that's what we're looking for. And also I've got the Iron Beast behind my lines who's carrying the tokens, and he's good at firing over my own troops because they're only height 1, so he doesn't suffer any modifier on his breath attack. So that's the plan. Get into a bit of war of attrition. Hopefully my spearlings will be able to survive for a little while with the ensnare against the orcs, but we'll see. And you can see there that he's not exactly abandoning that flank, but he's bringing the cavalry over this way. There's not a whole lot to fight for over on the left there. There's a big piece of terrain, like I said, that's blocking things up a bit. And over there he's just positioned his Crudger and the cavalry behind. So most things aren't in range to charge at the moment. I think his Crudger may be in range of something at this stage. Probably in range of those scouts. And the skulks, actually, what do? Well, he wavers my spearling regiment there. So this is on the left flank with a 666, the first nerve test of the game, so hopefully that's not a sign of things to come today. We'll find out though. There's the waver token. And turn 1 for Rhordia. So, what he neglected was obviously this age-old tactic of get a big nasty flyer right on the edge of the table, which is what I did with my Duke. He's not that big and nasty though, to be fair. Fly him up, turn at 90 degrees almost, or then you're looking across the enemy lines into their flank and you're kind of forcing them to move or react to you. And if, for example, that Crudger on Winged Slasher is distracted by my Duke, I believe his character is the more expensive one there, so I can probably live with that. And I've dipped the Honour Guard's toes into the woods, staying out of the charge arc, I believe, of the Gore Riders, rather than the range, because they have the speed on me, so I think I'm just out of their arc at the moment. But I have got into the woods so the Honour Guard can see through it, so if he's going to keep pushing forwards, he would get flanked by them unless he sends the Crudger into them, and the Crudger would of course be hindered by those woods, which I'm quite happy to accept, and I would still have my Duke looking into the flank of his other units then, so they would have to advance quite far beyond that point for him not to be able to see them. And I've pushed up in the centre, not hugely fast, I don't want to get straight into his charge range with everything, just edging forward a little bit. I've probably got my Soul Reavers to within their own charge range, possibly, but I'm trying to avoid the charge range of his Crudger with most of this stuff here. You can see actually that the scouts have moved backwards a little bit with that in mind. They don't want to get charged. You don't want a big flyer behind your lines like that. And the various shooting attacks, just chipping away at these. I know he's got healing, so I'm going to be targeting multiple units at once, preferably the two big hordes. He's only going to be able to heal one of them at a time, so I don't want to just put all the damage on a single unit at this stage if I don't think I'm going to kill it. If you can kill it, then obviously pile up the damage on one unit, but if you're just slowly chipping away, try and spread it round a bit. That's what I say. So there's 8 on that one, there was 3 on that one, so that one's obviously the candidate for healing there. That's the side where the volley guns are there, you can see there. And the spearling horde there, moving forward, they've got a little bit of an angle, but not too much. Just want to make sure no one's going to get flanked, but that's not much of a concern at the moment, since all the orcs are in kind of this big, compact wall of meat there. I'm just going to get the chat open here. We've got South Dakota Bob and King John in the chat right now. And you can see my archers, they don't really have much to do because of where I put them, so they're going to be working their way back towards the battlefield now. And there's that wavered unit not doing anything, they're just chilling, waiting to be not wavered anymore. So there's a nice wide shot, which I try to remember to do because it gives you a bit better sense of perspective of the battlefield and you get a greater sense of what's going on, I think, rather than everything being too zoomed in. But occasionally, in the heat of battle, I forget to do a wide shot. So what I want to do, those skulks are going to be really annoying unless I kill them, so I want my archers to just move and get to within sight of them and start taking shots at them, because it's not going to take much to kill them, and my archers are stealthy, so if he's firing back, he's got very few shots, he's not going to kill the archers before they kill him, probably. And otherwise they could just be sitting there all game just plinking away shots into my flank, which I don't really want, so I want to deal with them. But then I've got this big giant wall of meat in the centre. But the archers are in no position to deal with that at the moment. So they're mainly going to be concentrating on the skulks, I think. So we're on to the orc turn now. And you can see, well, the Crudger wouldn't actually fit facing forwards because his nose was catching on one of the undead ghostly chicken riders there. So we turned him sideways, but he is actually facing into the unit. So he is attacked in there. See what he can do to the Honour Guard. I'm hoping not much. And incidentally, I did leave the Duke within inspiring range of the Honour Guard, assuming that he was probably going to take this move. So I don't want to leave it to chance that one lucky nerve roll could kill them off. And then the two orc hordes have moved forwards within my charge range as well, so he's quite happy for me to get the first charge in because my units are mainly weaker than his. The Soul Reavers, though, can definitely take one of those units with a bit of luck. And I mean, just look at that, that is just a big wall of green death advancing with the trolls right behind there. They're not quite so green. And oh, what's the difference between these two pictures? Oh, there we go. It was moving the Gore Riders there into their final positions. That's where they end up, actually. Look at that live rotation action there. You don't get this on any other channel, do you? There's some good stuff there. High quality entertainment. So despite the fact that the two halves of that orc horde are kind of not level at the moment, they are actually a horde. All the characters waiting behind. So when I see something like Gakamak hiding behind other units, that does concern me because of course he's an individual, so he's nimble, he's going to be able to run around them without that much difficulty. But because they're so close together, he may struggle to only use a certain number of pivots, because there are certain units he wouldn't be able to reach from there, I think. It depends where the other units in front go, though. And you can see how it's looking. It's somewhat surrounded the big meat blob that he's got going on there. My Honour Guard aren't going to be able to charge anyone in the flank right now. But I believe also my Duke does not have a line on those Gore Riders there. They've moved forward far enough so they can't be charged by the Duke, which is wise because a Duke in the flank could potentially take out a unit of cavalry in one go if he gets a little bit of luck. So you don't want to be doing that. If you're going to take a charge from a halfling Duke, you want it to be in the front. You're probably going to survive. He's not got that many attacks. So, I believe we're... Oh, that's the healing there that's going on. So, that Orc Horde has been healed up to only 4 damage on them now. 2 damage from the Rhordia on the Honour Guard, and they're not concerned about that at all. So I'd hope they can kill that slasher on the counter charge. They're not going to have their thunderous charge anymore, but I do also have the Duke that I can throw in there as well. So, what am I going to do with my turn 2? Well, throwing everything in there, I've thrown the horde of Spearlings and a regiment of Spearlings into the horde of Orcs on the left, and I've thrown the Soul Reavers into the horde on the right. Then the shooting is going to be focused on whatever's behind the hordes, mainly the Trolls, because they're a really dangerous piece of backup, and there's also the Gore Riders on the right flank that I'm looking at as well. So, what do the volley guns achieve? Well, all 3 of them completely obliterate the Troll unit in one go. So, boom. They didn't do a ridiculous amount of damage, but I did get 2 decent nerve rolls to remove them, slightly above average to kill them, I think, so that was good, because all these Orc units typically get their nerve boosted by lots of things around them. Right then. Okay, so the Duke goes into the flank of the Rhordia. The Honour Guard countercharged into the front, got it up to 11 damage, but not enough to kill it yet. It does inspire itself, so I'd hope to kill it next turn, and I don't think his cavalry are in a position to join in and help this fight, particularly at this stage. So, look at that. The Soul Reavers get that unit to a hefty amount. They're on 17 damage there, but because of the War Drum, it's not enough to actually kill them. I'm not sure if they become wavered, but they're the ones that have Fury. That could be what happened here. And the other unit don't take that much damage. They're only up to 11, so that's nothing for them to worry about yet. I don't think anyone has picked up the push token in the centre there. He's probably saving that for a War Drum. They're a good candidate for picking things up as well, because they don't want to be engaging in fights on their own necessarily. So you can just give them that token and then hide. So there's how it's looking. Threw lots of the combat stuff in there, and I think I took out the Skulks with shooting this turn as well with my archers. So that was good to get rid of them. They weren't inspired, so it just took 1... I think it was above average nerve roll again to get rid of them, but no inspiring, so that can happen. As I know, I typically don't take that many sources of inspiring, especially with Rhordians, because the characters are very inspiring, so you don't need as many to spread it out across your army. Turn 3 for the Orcs. So, lots of charging going on. He's charged the horde on the left into the Spearling horde. So the Spearling regiment is the little block on the right of that triple there. And then he's charged the other horde, who were fortunate possibly to only become wavered, and then were able to use their Fury, along with the Gore Riders, to charge into the Soul Reavers. So that double charge could take them out, because there's a lot of crushing and thunderous going in there, which is what you want. And Soul Reavers, of course, aren't going to be inspired, but they have dealt severe damage, and with my shooting abilities, that horde of Orcs is not going to survive the game now with that much damage on them, unless they get really lucky with heal rolls. But there are 2 candidate units for that, though. And there's how it's looking. So the Gore Riders on the left there, they're kind of jammed in, but they're also potential backup. So, yep, the Soul Reavers do get killed. They take a ton of damage. And that is how they position themselves afterwards. So, the Gore Riders, the way they're positioned, because the Duke was in the flank of the Rhordia and Winged Slasher, as you saw earlier, the angle that he required to see this unit, because he can't see past the Slasher, was very precise, and those Gore Riders had to make a very specific move to get out of his sight, and I don't think they've managed it. I think he'll be hindered if he charges in, but he will have a flank on them, because if they'd gone forwards, they would have had the flank charge from an Iron Beast to think about, which would have been possible. And if they'd stayed where they were, I think the Duke possibly couldn't have seen them, but I think the position they were in to begin with, the Iron Beast could have had them, so they had to go backwards, but they went backwards too far, that was it. So obviously you can't control how far backwards you go, it's just D3, and I think they went back 3, so the Duke is going to have a flank charge on them now, if he should choose to. And over here, you can see that the horde of Spearlings have taken some damage, but they're not dead yet, they're clinging to life, because they are pretty tough like that. So you can see the situation I'm talking about there with the Iron Beast. He would have had a flank charge on those Gore Riders if they hadn't gone backwards. So he thought, well, I'd rather take a flank charge from the Duke with the hindrance of the woods, I'd rather risk that rather than guarantee that the Iron Beast will have a flank charge unhindered. So probably the correct decision there, I would say. Or at least the correct line of logic, because it wasn't even guaranteed that he would fall back far enough for the Duke to see. So it was decent odds that it was a good move. So the Honour Guard finish off the Crudger on Slasher. They're up to 4 wounds, you can see now, from last turn, but that Slasher hasn't really done much to them. And the Duke into the flank of the Gore Riders, only just 3 damage, so they're not too concerned, but they will lose their Thunderous Charge. Then my various shooting attacks over on this side. I've got the Scouts and I've got the Volley Gun there. And the 2 other Volley Guns, well, they obliterate that horde that was heavily damaged by the Soul Reavers last time. And here there was a triple charge, horde of Spearlings on the left, regiment of Spearlings and the Iron Beast all into the other horde. When you've got lots of shooting like that, you don't want to be tying up every single unit in combat, every enemy unit. So obviously if you then fail to remove the unit you're shooting at, you could put yourself in a risky situation, but you've got to take those chances sometimes. So triple charge, killed that horde, shooting, killed the other horde. So that worked out. And the Orcs really, they don't have that much left that can actually hold tokens now, but the fight is taking place mainly on my half of the table. So still potentially dicey if he can get a couple of lucky hits in, because that horde of mine is about to go, obviously. As soon as they get hit by anything, they'll die. Iron Beast still untouched, and he's carrying tokens. The Honour Guard over there, so it's looking very healthy at this stage, but it's not a guarantee. I do need to get those tokens into his half, though. He's got 4 units left that can carry tokens. Got the 2 War Drums and the Cavalry. Cavalry don't really want to be carrying tokens around because it slows them down. Turn 4 for the Orcs. So they decided to go all in on the Iron Beast, who's carrying my push tokens, with Gakamak and the 2 War Drums helping out. They do have a few attacks each. And the Gore Riders countercharge into the Duke, waver him. And the Iron Beast is up to 8 damage, but not dead. Gakamak is like a guaranteed source of damage. I think he hits on 2s. So with... what other special rules does he have? Let's just look at the list here, because I know he's very, very good. Oh yeah, it's Vicious that he has. So Crushing Strength for 3 with Vicious. So with hitting on 2s as well, sometimes you're going to be, well, I'd say quite often, with all 7 attacks he's going to be getting wounds in. So you can generally expect to do 6 wounds with him every time he goes into attack, which is very, very reliable. Turn 4 for the League of Rhordia. So Gore Riders are dead. The Honour Guard, who don't care about being in the woods because they've got the Caterpillar Potion, and the Duke, who couldn't do anything. He was standing there wavered. So the Honour Guard did the job for him. And what does my shooting do this time? Well, lots of wounds done to the various War Drums, and I think the Iron Beast charged into Gakamak, and looks like it's done 2 damage. Yeah, there's the total damage inflicted there, so just chipping away at them. And the 2 volley guns on the hill, they obliterate the other unit of Gore Riders. So the Orcs are really whittled down now, they don't have much left at all. They've just got a few heroes running around, mainly. Yeah, they don't have any actual troops or regiments or hordes or anything now. They've just got 2 War Drums that can hold tokens, and then 3 individuals. So if I can plough through all those. Turn 5 for the Orcs, so what's their game plan? War Drum goes into that regiment of Spearlings because I've got a token on there, I think, and they want it. And the other 2, Gakamak and the other War Drum, go in to try and finish off the Iron Beast. I would expect them to probably do it this turn. And I think that's the Flagger who's just charged into the Honour Guard just to block them up and stop them coming in to help. And the God Speaker, he wavers the horde of spearlings with his ranged attack. The Flagger doesn't do anything to the Honour Guard, but the Iron Beast is dead, so the War Drum has stolen all his loot tokens. So he's just got a big pile of them on there now. And look at that, it's a human hand coming into play. So it's still not looking good for the Orcs, but they've got some more kills on the board now. So what are the Halflings going to do about this? Turn 5. So the Honour Guard just mow down the Flagger and overrun, getting close to the action. The little shooting battery down here with the Scouts and the volley gun, they only get 1 damage up there onto the God Speaker. The Duke charged in and killed a War Drum, and he's looking up towards where the God Speaker is now, because he wants to head off in that direction with the tokens to get them into the opposing half, because he is carrying them now. And the volley guns here, what do? Well, more damage on those Orcs there. War Drum almost dead. Gakamak on a little bit of damage, but still very unhealthy for the Orcs, and it's just mopping up at this stage. What can the Orcs do though? Well, they double charge into that regiment of spearlings and don't kill them. Well, so what's going to happen now? Well, the Duke is going to fly off and try and attack the God Speaker on the hill, leaving the... well, he can't fly, I should say. The Duke is just going to have to charge, because he's carrying tokens now. But the Honour Guard are then going to try and charge Gakamak, kill him, overrun into the War Drum, and eat it for breakfast. So let's see if that works out. So turn 6, the Duke gets in there, but doesn't kill the God Speaker, and yes. So the Honour Guard mow down Gakamak, and the War Drum is dead as well. So all the tokens are stolen by me, I own all the tokens, and there's only a God Speaker left on the table, and there's another human hand scooping up some dice. So ended up being a very, very one-sided score at the end. In fact, let's see, so I got a maximum of 5 victory points for the tournament point bonus, on top of the 15 that I get for the win, because I was holding 5 objectives pretty much. So there's a maximum of 5 for those bonus points. And for kill points, because I didn't kill the God Speaker, who was worth slightly more than 100 points, I only got +4 for that instead of +5. So that God Speaker surviving has denied me a point there. So we'll see if that's going to be crucial at the end of the tournament or not. But I did kill an awful lot. And we're going to go on to game 2 now. So feel free to comment if you are watching this live, by the way. So this game is against the Brotherhood. In fact, I'm just going to go and load up that army list right now so I can see it, because I'm not overly familiar with the Brotherhood. So I want to be looking at that list so I can get the names of the units at least somewhat correct. Okay. And before that happens, I think I'm going to sneeze though. Right, let's turn the microphone off quick. Okay, I'm back. Right, I've got the list for the Brotherhood up now, and I think I'll be able to accurately give you the names of the enemy units for once. So, this scenario, by the way, is pillage. So using 5 objectives, so placed on the table alternately by the players. You can actually see all of the objectives on this shot here. There's 2 white ones towards the top of the screen, and there are 3 others. There's one right in front of my lines, there's one on the hill in front of the chess clock, and there's one on the far left there next to the woods. So at the end of the game you just want to be controlling as many of those as possible with unit strength. And this enemy army I'm facing has quite a decent speed advantage over me and manoeuvrability. There are some fast units in there. There are some not so fast. There's some water elementals in there as well. They're not hugely fast. But you can see I've set up quite a little defensive formation down here. I don't want anything getting behind my lines or in the flank, because I've often found that when I face an army that's very manoeuvrable, I tend to let that happen too often. So I'm definitely working on that, playing a bit more solid and compact, and also keeping, you don't have to put everything on the front lines just because it's good at killing. you can kind of keep things back and use them as a deterrent. So, for example, here I've got the Soul Reavers and the Iron Beast behind. The Iron Beast likes to hang out behind the other units anyway, but the Soul Reavers, I'm not that eager to push them out. The same with the Honour Guard. They're kind of behind a regiment of Spearlings. I don't want them on the front necessarily fighting. I want the enemy to be hesitant in coming in, because I think I've probably got a shooting advantage here for a start. And I think I'll need them as backup. I definitely don't want them taking the first hit. So I want my ensnaring units out there to take the first hit, certainly. But I'm not going to be that eager to just throw people's lives away. Like the Duke, for example, I'm not going to just charge him out and get him killed early on in the game. I'm going to try and preserve the lives of units, even if they end up in a situation that's not favourable to them. Instead of saying, well, I'm just going to throw them in, do a bit of damage before they die, try and just keep them alive longer. That was kind of going through my mind going into this tournament, because often I find that if I'm out deployed, I'll kind of throw a unit away thinking, well, it's going to die anyway, when really I could have just kept it alive longer and just tied up those enemy units who would then get back into the game. So not going to be too eager to throw things into the fight. Right, so we've got the opponent's army here, and we've got some cavalry. We've got lots of it, in fact. Well, the purple dudes on the left are Elohai, so they're allies, and they can fly. Called their forces of Basileia, or Basilia, however you want to say it. There's also a phoenix from that army somewhere. We'll get to that in a minute, though. And the cavalry, there are two Order of Redemption units, one with the Brew of Strength, one with the Brew of Sharpness. So they are actually very scary, but they are very reliant on Thunderous Charge, especially the one that doesn't have the Brew of Strength. So if I can get them to hit my Spearling units, where they'll be walking into a wall of Ensnare and Phalanx, then their Thunderous Charge is going to be useless. So that's the plan there, try and get them to attack Spearlings when possible. Then there are some other cavalry units as well. There are some, there's some fast cavalry that are called, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Reconnoitereurs. I'm going to assume that's a horribly butchered pronunciation, but they're fast cav and they're fast. Apart from that, there's some infantry as well. So I think the fast cavalry are at the front there, and there's a regiment of the Order of Redemption behind them. In this picture you can see there is an infantry horde, and that is plowshares, so they're fairly standard infantry, low defence, but they do have crushing strength as well. Two hordes of water elementals, and then there's some heroes, one of which is able to surge the water elementals, and that is the Devoted, who's on a horse. There's also an adjutant on a horse as well. And where is the Phoenix? It's a very elite list, this, so there's not that many units. There is the Phoenix over there, very, very tall model. So you can see where the base is. Look how far down that is compared to the actual model itself. That looks like it's off the table from this angle. So, my setup, I've got a volley gun in there, I've got the Duke behind because there's flying enemy units. I want something to deter them, and once they get through something on my lines, if for example they charge a volley gun, which I can't necessarily always prevent, I want them to not be able to just overrun and get behind my lines and be a nuisance. I want them to have a bit of a threat to them. So whatever they charge in here, there's going to be something that can see and threaten them afterwards. So that's the plan here. In the middle, I've got the big wall of Spearlings, a regiment and a horde there, with the standard bearer, the Iron Beast, and the Soul Reavers behind. The archers right next to an objective because they don't want to move, so it makes sense to try and just chill out around that objective the whole game. And then on the other side, on the left there, I've got a volley gun. Another volley gun there, and I put that down fairly early in deployment because I wanted to lock down this side of the table. There aren't a lot of objectives on it, but I didn't want the enemy to deploy too wide because I didn't want them coming in on this flank either. I didn't want to have to completely curve round my army in two different directions. I'm quite happy to be surrounded on one side, but does that even make sense? Well, you get the idea. I don't want to have enemies coming in from all directions, so I'm discouraging enemies from deploying over here with a volley gun early on, is the thinking behind that. And the scouts are over there as well, because there is actually an objective that they can move onto and sit on and shoot off it, hopefully, for the whole game. They only have to worry about the Phoenix on that side, who I will happily shoot off if it pops out into view. Turn 1, and my opponent, I believe, elected to go first. And the water elementals getting straight up there, but they're not actually on the hill, so I'm gonna suffer some negative modifiers if I'm going to be shooting at them. And you can see the Phoenix has immediately abandoned the left flank, so maybe didn't fancy his chances chasing after a volley gun and the scouts, and feels they can be more widely used, those talents, or talons as it were, over on the right and in the centre. So that means I've got the left flank to myself now, and there is an objective there that I want the scouts to sit on, and I'm hoping they can just sit there the whole game and just plink off shots at the enemy, because it's, as I said, it's a very elite Brotherhood list, so there's not that many units to spare to be chasing my chaff units around. Then, over on this side, the knights have moved up. They obviously don't want to get in charge range of any of my stuff. I think the light cavalry there are in charge range of my duke, but he's not worried about that because he would just charge and kill the duke afterwards, quite handily, I'm sure. Turn 1 for me. So there's been a bit of an advance on the left. The spearlings have gone up. They're not into charge range of anything. I've pushed my spearlings forward. I don't care if they get charged, because that's what they're there for, just there to absorb a charge so the duke and the honour guard can then push in. The Iron Beast moving up. The Soul Reavers are biding their time. Like I said, I want something that's a threat later on, especially if I need to clear out those water elemental hordes. The two main objectives, obviously, in the way this battle's set up, are going to be the one right in front of the archers there, and the one at the base of the hill. The other two are quite far back, and the Brotherhood don't have that much shooting ability, really. I'm not sure they even have any. Let's have a look. Do they have any ranged units at all? I don't think so. They might have some spells. There's a Warbow of Cabba, actually, on one of the water elemental units, but I think that might be it. So they definitely can't afford to just sit back on the back objectives. They have to come and get those two, really. So that's going to be the crucial kind of battleground here, which is going to leave my scouts alone with the one on the left, hopefully. And I actually kill the light cavalry unit with my shooting. You can see one volley gun would have been able to see them at this stage, and the archers, I think. Or maybe even just the archers right now. But that was enough to get rid of them. So that's nice. That's a nice little bonus. One less unit to charge in when they make their grand multi-charge, which I'm sure they will. The Elohai take a little bit of damage as well, but they don't mind about that. And the water elementals on that side, there was cover from one of the volley guns at least shooting at them, so only 4 damage there. And they, of course, are going to regenerate wounds, I believe. I think it's regenerate they have, rather than... They may have some healing ability in there as well. Turn 2 for the Brotherhood, so pushing forward. The water elementals obviously slow without the surge being used on them, but they're moving up together, and with the plowshares next to them. And behind, we've got that is actually the base of the Phoenix. You can't see it in the shot because it's so tall. And I think it's the Phoenix, actually, that has a ranged attack that... Let me have a look at the rules for that right now. The Phoenix... Okay, yeah, it has breath attack 10. There we go. So the Phoenix, I think, wavers this standard bearer. And it's not a bad idea trying to take out the inspiring source in the middle of the army, who also has the loot of insatiable darkness, which makes the spearlings a much more scary prospect. So, turn 2 for the Rhordians. So I'm pushing the spearlings even further forward now, just trying to tempt someone in to charge them, because I feel like they could survive a first charge from some knights with the ensnare and phalanx there. Those knights are very reliant on their thunderous charge ability, so I'd be hoping they could survive one charge. Everything else, I don't want to be charged immediately by the water elementals though, so I'm just going to stand off them a bit. Because he really has to come to me. I'm going to be out shooting him for the whole game, and also the objectives are kind of in my favour if we include the one on the left that the scouts are going to be on too. He has to come into that one on the archers there, unless he just sits back and gets shot and hopes to survive the game, which is risky. So the knights over here have taken some shooting damage. They're up to 5. And those water elementals are up to 8, but they're going to be healing back much of that. Okay, so here we go. Here's the action with turn 3. I don't think I've actually taken any pictures of my scouts over on the left, but they are getting to an objective and they're just going to be sitting on it. So, the knights into the spearlings. The Elohai into the volley gun, which is okay by me. They're two of my more cheap expendable units, so if something has to take the first hit, that's why they were positioned that way, really. But of course the enemy can't just sit back and say, well, that's not the ideal target, I'll just sit here and wait for a better one to present itself, because that doesn't always happen. You've just got to kill things and get in amongst the enemy as fast as possible. The Ploughshare's moving up. The Phoenix charges into the other volley gun, so we'll see how that goes. And the Water Elementals. Now he was looking for a way that he could position the Phoenix to prevent the Water Elemental horde from becoming hindered by that piece of terrain, I think. Or, I'm not sure, do Water Elementals ignore terrain, or is that just Earth Elementals? Let's have a look at the page here. Oh, they do have Pathfinder, actually. Yeah, so that doesn't matter. So, I don't think there was a way of getting in a double charge, possibly. They went into one unit each anyway. There was something he was trying to set up that wasn't possible, I believe, but I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe because of the distances involved. So both of those units are into combat. Sometimes you just got to get everything blocked in there. And look at that. It looks pretty grim, everything being surrounded and attacked, but what damage is it going to do when we get to the fighty and killy section of the turn? Well, let's find out. So this volley gun, the Phoenix, isn't that great in combat actually. Only manages to waver it, which is okay by me. I mean, if it had died, that would have opened up the possibility for the Soul Reavers to get into combat faster via attacking that Phoenix. But it's possible it may have had an angle to go backwards and get out of their possible arc, or go forwards and get out of their possible arc, I'm not sure. Well, it didn't come up, so who knows. Over here, not much damage done to those spearlings with their ensnare ability. And the other ones took a tiny bit of damage as well, not much. Over here, this spearling regiment gets wavered by those devoted. I think, is it devoted? No, it's the, what are they called now? Order of Redemption, that's it. Look at that. The Elohai just do a zillion damage to the volley gun and annihilate it, as expected. So looking at that scene here, it looks like the units are boxed in, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to describe it now because the pictures on my turn are taken after the fact. So I want the Honor Guard down in the bottom right to charge into the Elohai, which are the purple ones. And to do so, I'm going to need to free up some space. So first of all, the Duke is going to have to get out of the way, and he wants to block enemy units from charging into the Honor Guard after they've destroyed the Elohai. So he's going to charge into the Knights directly behind the Elohai unit, because there is space for him to do so. So whether he'd be throwing his life away or not, maybe, but I think it's worth it at this stage to protect the Honor Guard, who are a much more hard-hitting proposition. And then to make more space, the archers are going to have to pivot. They won't have enough space. Moving sideways won't cut it. It's not going to take them far enough. I think that the only way is from them to pivot and allow the Honor Guards to get through, depriving themselves the opportunity to shoot at a really juicy target, but I think that's the best way to go. So, turn 3. And there you can see that's exactly what happened. So, the Iron Beast has also turned a little bit to the left because I want people to start toasting that Phoenix. Because I haven't really got any way of attacking it in close combat, I don't think. I'm not sure if the Soul Reavers maybe possibly could have got into it, but I don't want them facing the wrong way, really. And yeah, I think I was confident enough to shoot at the Phoenix. I mean, looking at it here, I think because the base is exactly the same size, I think the Soul Reavers, after the Spearlings went into the Water Elementals, could have actually gone into the Phoenix, which would have been a fairly easy kill, but they would have been stuck facing that way mainly. They wouldn't have had any space to pivot because of the volley gun being there, and I didn't want them facing off in that direction, definitely. So I thought with the shooting I've got with the Iron Beast and the Master Sergeant, you can see behind the horde of Spearlings there, on the right, at the back of them, he's also going to be shooting it, so I was confident I would do something to it. It's only defense 3, so breath attacks are great for taking out things like that, and regular bows. So you can see well, we finally got a picture over here. The scouts moving towards that objective, and that blue one right at the top, that's what they want. And the volley gun is moving over in this direction because there's nothing for them to shoot at over there, because there are no enemies. We've got Russell and Matthew in the chat as well. Matthew says, awesome water effects. Yes, that is a ridiculously awesome army I'm playing against here. Unless you're talking about my water effects. I wouldn't bet on it though. All my water effects are just pound shop 2-part resin. But I'm sure the ones on my opponent's side are much more complicated. The army I'm facing here did actually win the best army award, by the way. I definitely voted for it as one of my 2 favourites. And with that shooting, I managed to waver the Phoenix. Excellent, that's what I needed. Just don't want it attacking anything, really. And then next turn, the volley gun will be freed up to shoot at it again. So, not much damage done from the spearlings to the elementals, as you can imagine, because they're pretty tough, and spearlings aren't that great at dishing out punishment. So that's going to drag on. The Honour Guard get 9 damage onto the Elohai, but don't kill them, which could be annoying. They actually rolled really badly, the Honour Guard, in this round of combat, which kind of means that the Duke throwing his life into there and doing some damage to those knights may have been potentially pointless. I'm not sure. Would there have been space? There may have been space for a multi-charge on the Honour Guard anyway, so maybe the Duke going in there was the best thing regardless. So that's how it looks. It's a bit of a squashed up mess in there, but I'm not feeling too bad about it. My spearlings on the left are holding firm at the moment. I've got the Iron Beast and the Soul Reavers as backup, so I'm confident in that side. The right hand side I'm not confident in at all, but I just want to take things down, and hopefully the left hand side will run out victors, and I'll be able to turn around something like the Iron Beast perhaps and help out over here. But it's pretty damn close at the moment. A nice wide shot there. I made the comment at the time that we could have basically been playing this game on a display board rather than a full-size table because of how compact all the action was. There's only really a couple of units out over on the left of mine who aren't that involved in the game right now. So turn 4. And the knights. Back into those spearlings. I would expect them to die right now, certainly. The other knights managed to get the flank on the Duke because of the way he was positioned after he bounced out of combat with them. So they're going to kill him. The Elohai, I would expect them not to kill the Honour Guard in one go. But you never know. And over here, so we've got a double charge with the Ploughshares and the Water Elementals, I believe, into the Spearlings there. And the Spearling Regiment on the right flank do drop. The Duke gets killed as well. But the Honour Guard do not take much damage at all, so they'll be fine and they'll be free to attack something else next turn. So not much damage dished out to the Spearlings over here. The ones in the middle don't take much damage either. It's just really difficult. There's so much hindrance going on. The Ploughshares, when they went in, they're hindered and ensnared, and very difficult to chew through these Spearling hordes when there's terrain around, unless you're able to ignore the terrain like the Elementals, and even they've struggled to get through. So it's looking dicey. There's a lot of units left, but I think I can kill things next turn. So, turn 4. The Honour Guard, if you look where they were, facing the Elohai, the base size does allow them to turn and charge at the knights there, on the left, or on the right should I say, because, in fact, let's just remove the camera for a second so you can see them properly. There you go. So the Honour Guard want to attack them, because that's going to free up the Elohai to be shot by my other units, for example the archers, and the Elohai are much closer to death. So I think that's the best move there, trying to kill as much as possible in one go. The Honour Guard will probably die after this turn. They're most likely to get charged by something, but we shall see. There we go, Honour Guard in there. They don't manage to kill the knights, but they're not doing very well so far with their rolls. But I do kill the Water Elemental Horde because, in fact, let's go back and show you another angle again. You can see on the left-hand side of the battlefield here, I've got my, let's see, my opponent and I both have units, both individuals pressed up against the backs of our lines at varying points. and I believe that has caused this kind of difference in the alignment of the battle line. So you can see that my Spearling regiment on the left do actually have a flank charge available to the water elementals on the right of those two units. So that's what they're going to take, and that's going to allow me to get a double charge with a regiment in the flank and a horde in the front. And that is ultimately what kills off that water elemental unit. And the unit here is then able to turn around and face the front again. So that's one water elemental unit down. They were healing themselves up like beasts, so I'm glad to have got them killed. The ploughshares, I think, may have taken some damage from shooting over the top. So the volley gun just obliterated the phoenix that was standing right in front of it. And there's how it's looking at the moment. So the Elohai did get killed by the archers and the Master Sergeant. They were already heavily damaged though, so that was expected. So just taking out a few units like that, it starts to look a lot more healthy against an elite army. The Water Elementals, the Elohai dead, and the Phoenix dead. So the left flank is looking really healthy. Right flank, not so much. The Honor Guard are about to get flanked by knights, but it's not completely done on that flank either, because both those units of knights have suffered wounds now, I think. And cavalry don't have outrageously high nerve. So the Water Elementals, I think they've just repositioned themselves. They haven't charged, to the best of my knowledge. They just want to stop me getting to that objective, which could be critical. Just playing the scenario at this late-ish stage in the game can be wise. Double charge on the Honor Guard, they're going to get absolutely obliterated there. And I think the ploughshares do not charge into my spearlings, because he's probably thinking now he needs his unit strength alive to sit on the objectives and claim some points here. And if he doesn't charge in, when I charge at him, then I'm going to be hindered. So that's going to make it very difficult for the spearlings to do anything there. And the knights get rid of the Honor Guard. Turn 5 for Rhordia. So what do the archers and the Master Sergeant manage to do? Chip a bit more damage onto the knights, that's all. In the middle, the spearlings put a teensy bit more damage onto the ploughshares. And the Iron Beast into the water elementals. The Soul Reavers still haven't done anything, they're just kind of sitting there, waiting. There was only enough space for the Iron Beast to get in and not them, unfortunately. So what I would like to do, I would like to move that regiment of spearlings towards that objective and possibly get a flank charge at some point on the water elementals as well. But we'll see if anything like that becomes possible. You can see the scouts just chilling out on that objective on the left there, totally unthreatened. They're just scoring a point for me, and they're going to stay there the whole game, and occasionally they are able to shoot things. And the volley gun that I repositioned, you can see there, has got itself in a good spot now if things go wrong over here. So that's how it's looking, and my battle line on the right, as predicted, has crumbled, and on the left it's doing very well. The centre is very close though. Turn 6. So there's going to potentially be the end of the game here after turn 6, so it's very, very important that the Brotherhood position themselves in such a way that they can hold on to objectives here, because I'll have, if the game's going to end at the end of this turn, I'll have last crack at it and I'll be able to reposition my units to kind of shimmy them around a bit to possibly give myself a win. Because I only need to hold one of these two contested objectives to win, because I've already got the scouts totally unopposed on the other one. So there's a double charge from the knights into the archers. That's probably going to be enough to kill them. And I believe one of them became wavered, and that dice was their headstrong roll, which they failed at the first attempt, and he used his once per game tournament reroll on it. I think that's why I took a picture of the dice there. So one of those knight units wouldn't have made it in without that reroll, to the best of my recollection. Okay, the water elementals here definitely haven't charged anyone. They've just moved sideways because they want to prevent anyone getting A, flank charges on them, and B, towards that objective. Those are two important things now. So unless I can wipe them out and then overrun, I'm not going to have the objective, and it's difficult to take down those units. Or have I just lied here? Did he change his mind? Yeah, maybe he actually attacked that unit there. Maybe he did attack the spearlings after all, because I was taking the pictures throughout the opponent's turn, So that must be what happened there. So I think he must have decided to attack the spearlings and kill them, and he's just angling himself there at the end. So the archers do get killed. Master Sergeant looking very lonely now in the woods. There they are, that's how they're positioned at the end of it. So at this stage, only one of those units is within range of the objective. Only one regiment of knights, because the plowshares, let's just find a picture of them, they've moved to the left. They didn't attack the spearlings. They've moved to the left to block up my path to getting to that objective, or my path to doing any flank charging onto the water elementals or anything like that. So they've got a horde, 2 hordes in fact, on that objective, so they're definitely going to claim it. So what I'm going to do, because where these knights end up after the combat, all I'm going to do is move my spearlings sideways to just guarantee that I've got a horde holding that objective against a regiment. So I'm going to be claiming it. So if the game ends on turn 6, I'm definitely going to win without any need to roll any dice. So, turn 6, and I actually managed to get my Soul Reavers into these knights down here. I was hoping to stop them becoming hindered by putting the Master Sergeant on the edge of the woods, but we got all the lasers out and everything to see whether it would have been possible to make the angle for the charge, and unfortunately it wasn't, so the Master Sergeant had to just stay in the woods. And you can see that the spearlings have moved down to hold that objective with their superior unit strength as compared to the cavalry regiment, and the Iron Beast, I think, possibly charged into that unit there. Because I'm not worried about the water elementals. I was quite happy to just pelt them with volley gun rounds. I don't think I killed them though. And the scouts are holding an objective there. The water elementals are holding their objective, and my unit of my horde of spearlings are holding that objective. And is the game going to end there, or are we going to get a turn 7? Well, the game ends there, so that is a win for Rhordia. And I can tell you, at the end of that game, let's see, so I got 2 bonus points for holding 2 objectives, 2 points for kill points. I actually killed 5 more points than my opponent, if our calculations were correct, but we both ended up with +2 points for kills, so very, very close. And I think with different unit positioning shenanigans, it could have been different, the result, because there is enough Brotherhood units, there are enough of them around here, to possibly do something about that right-hand objective. It would have been tricky though, because there were all kinds of issues going on, protecting the water elementals over on their objective, and protecting that one, because obviously if the water elementals died, and which was reasonably likely with all the shooting that was going to be targeted at them, and there's the Iron Beast around there who at one point had a possible flank charge on them. If the plowshares hadn't come over this way and they died, they would have lost that objective. The one on the right there, if I think the knights, the knight unit on the right, I don't think were ever within 3 inches of it, so they weren't able to affect that. But there could have been ways that they'd position themselves differently. For example, did they have any individuals that could have parked themselves to move units around a bit? I don't know. But I think that as the battle was developing, I think it was possible that the Brotherhood could have had the positioning advantage. But as it turned out, with the moves that actually happened during the game, not just theoretical, then as it turned out, the Rhordians have 2 objectives to 1. So there is another win. And going into round 3. Now, I've been on the top table for the last 2 rounds now, and in round 3, I'm going up against the spare player. At this event, and apparently all Northern Kings events, the spare player is just one of the Northern Kings who is just going to fill in if there is an odd number of players, but this player isn't eligible to win any trophies, though, apparently. So that's interesting. So on the top table, and this is a fellow League of Rhordia army here, and this is going to be the invade scenario. So a nice simple one, just get lots of unit strength into your opponent's half. And let's see, it's 2 very different lists though, because as you can see there, there's a piece of really difficult, impassable terrain there, the big tower. Towards the left, just in front of my deployment zone, there's lots of hills, and there's not that much easy line of sight ability to shoot at people in the open. There's lots of cover as well. There's the big pool, there's a field that we've both got archers in, two lots of woods. So on my left flank I've got my Soul Reavers and my Duke. Now of course, obviously the Duke can't inspire the Soul Reavers, but he's there because if you look over to the opponent's side there is an ancient Duke opposite them and a small cavalry unit. And I didn't want the Soul Reavers to kind of be outranged and manipulated around by that guy, so I wanted the support of my Duke over there. So I've got probably a stronger left flank now with those two. In the middle there, I've got Spearlings, 2 regiments of them with the Master Sergeant, the volley gun, the archers, who are in cover there, the Spearling Horde with the Standard Bearer and the Iron Beast behind, and over on this side I've got the Scouts who are going to move up into the woods. I've got 2 volley guns touching the woods, they can shoot through it, and the Honour Guard over there. Well, the opposing army, let's load up this army list, shall we? Let's see, is it on here? Is the spare player army on this document I'm looking at right now? I don't think it is, you know. Right, that's it, I'm just going to have to remember. So, I think the House Guard, something like that, the Rhordian human units, there are some regiments of them. They have crushing strength and they hit on 3s, I think. I think there are 3 regiments of those. There's 2 over on this side, and the other unit is kind of the weaker Rhordian halfling, well, human Rhordian units, the weaker infantry. Between them there's a halfling Master Sergeant on a horse, and he's going to be causing havoc. There are some halfling ranger cavalry at the front there, just dipping their toes into that pool. Then there are 2 other heroes. Those are both halfling sorcerers with Wind Blast. One of them has the Zephyr Crown for the damaging Wind Blast, and I just knocked the microphone a bit there. Damaging Wind Blast on one of them, and the other just has the regular Wind Blast. They both have Drain Life though, so they're both going to be able to suck the life out of my units and then fire it, embed it back into his own units. Behind them there's the Archer Horde. There is a horde of Dogs of War with more of the very scary crushing strength 1 halfling human infantry on the right there and the cruddy infantry on the left. There's the Battle Shrine behind and the Ancient Duke out there with the other unit of halfling ranger cavalry. So turn 1, and my opponent elects to go first again, I think, or I may have elected to let my opponent go first, actually, I can't remember. Maybe thinking that I wouldn't have any of my shooting in range at the start, so I might as well let my opponent go first. That could have been the thinking there. And there is everything advanced up. You can see the Master Sergeant's right out in the open. He's individual and stealthy, it's going to be really difficult to shoot him down. But yeah, everything just piling forward. I do have kind of a shooting advantage on paper, but whether that translates to the game or not, we shall see. So over here you can see there's a picture of an empty space next to some spearlings. Well, what was there before? Let's go back and look. So, how far back are we going to have to go? I think that is possibly over here. That might be the volley gun is dead. Let's find out. Because the volley gun did take some damage there, on 4 damage, and I think one of the volley guns definitely died. That one became wavered, I think the other one died. One of them's still fine, but that's not great. So there is some shooting ability from the enemy. There is a Master Sergeant with a bow, there's archers, there's all sorts of things. There's the Ranger Cavalry, which of course are nimble, so they can move and still shoot without hindrance, so I think they did most of the damage in fact. And there's the Lightning Bolt on the Battle Shrine. So there's how it's looking, and I'm not hugely confident going into this one. The enemy has a lot of units, and a lot of them, I wouldn't say they're necessarily expendable, but I wouldn't feel like it's turned the tide in my favour if I killed any one of them other than the Dogs of War, which are very difficult to take out in the first place. The small regiments that are hard hitting, you can kill one, but then you'll have 2 countercharging you. So yeah, I think maybe the superior numbers of slightly hitty units might help my opponent here. and it is invade, of course, so the fact that I may have superior numbers of shooting units isn't necessarily an advantage, because we're going to want to be moving forwards ideally. Although of course it does mean that the enemy will move forwards into my range, so we could look at it that way. Over on the left, I've got the Soul Reavers turned so that they're not going to get flank charged by the Ancient Duke who's hiding in the woods there, and my Duke is just looking out there as if to say, jump onto this wall, charge me, and then you'll get Soul Reavered in the flank, if you feel like it. Central line there. I wouldn't be confident if it came down to kind of a war of attrition in close combat in the middle, but I do have lots of shooting aimed in that direction, so I can chip away at them first. And these spearlings, along with the Iron Beast, are headed straight up the centre, because it is invade after all. I want to do some fighting on the enemy half, and they'd be heading directly for the enemy archers if they keep going in this direction, with no difficult terrain in the way. The scouts edge into the woods, but I don't think I do anything. I'm trying to shoot the Master Sergeant, I think, which is difficult. There's not too many viable targets there, though. Turn 2 for the enemy Rhordians, and the Master Sergeant charges into the volley gun, which is bad news for me. And interesting situation here. So, like I was talking about earlier, when you have a unit that's in a position where it's definitely not going to win, like this is for the Honour Guard, I mean, what would you do? Make a hindered charge into the front unit that's terrible, and then get countercharged by the two good units afterwards, and quite possibly die. There is also an individual around there, a wizard, who could position itself on the wall, maybe, to stop the other units from becoming hindered, perhaps. So there's shenanigans that could be had. So the Honour Guard, if they didn't kill that unit there, which is possible because it's hindered, then they would be getting flanked by one of those units as well. So potentially bad time all round. So looking at that situation and thinking, well, my only options are 3 options, or let's say 4 options. I could charge into the unit directly in front, maybe kill them, maybe not, and then probably die. And then when I'm dead, that's then 2 enemy units that are then able to go and join the rest of the battle. Option 2, I can stay exactly where I am, not wanting to give up ground because it's invade, so if the enemy are going to fight me, make sure it's as far away from my half as possible. Potential. I think I'd be in charge range of at least one of the units there. Other option, move backwards so none of them can charge me, and kind of invite them onto me and try and make the terrain a bit more favourable. I don't want to be fighting on that wall because that's going to hinder the Honour Guard, whereas the woods below aren't. And option 4 is just attempt to turn around and run away in a totally different direction, which may not be possible because of the distances involved. So I'm going to elect to back away from them shortly, because I want to be fighting on terms that are more favourable to me, and I don't want to throw their lives away too early and allow the enemy units to go and join the rest of the fight, because they're not as fast as some of the other units on the table. So if they get stuck fighting over here for a long time, the best they can do really is score in the scenario, rather than joining in the killing. So you can see that big scary wall of spears in the middle there, the Dogs of War. The perfect unit for if you're in a Home Alone type situation where there are burglars who are planning to invade your home. Kind of place that underneath the window so that when they step through in bare feet, which they'll undoubtedly have because you'll have put all kinds of tar-based traps around the outside of the house, then they will pierce their foot on those pointy pikes. And there's another angle on that, and another angle that doesn't really show anything new, but you can see the layout of the Ancient Duke and the Ranger Cavalry there. John says, do you like adding Soul Reavers to the army? Well, so far they've done alright, I would say. I've held them back a bit in Game 2. In Game 1 they did their big hit and then they got killed, so we'll see how they do in these 2 games, and then I'll be able to give you the final conclusion on that. But they are definitely a big threat and a big points investment at the same time. So there is a lot of wind blast in this opposing army, as I said, and that's been used to push back my volley guns, and I think the Iron Beast was targeted, and the archers have dropped back as well considerably, you can see there. So wind blast is very potent. Of course I used it in my previous tournament list, and it's something I would give another go. I'm not ruling it out forever, I'm just trying out different things. Still fairly new to the Rhordian army, there are lots of things I need to sample. Some of the new spells I haven't touched either, so bringing casters back in would be the opportunity to try them. One of them is Blizzard, that I'm looking at trying at some point. I've heard good things about that. So, 1 damage is plinked onto the Soul Reavers by the Halfling Ranger Cavalry there, which is mildly annoying, but not too annoying. The Halfling Scouts get killed on 1 damage. That's what happens when you leave things out of inspiring range. They die. And here another volley gun is killed, I think. And this one becomes wavered as a result of the Master Sergeant there. So that's how the battle line's looking, and looking dicey, but I've still got a lot of units alive. I've got options. Turn 2 for Rhordia. So, the Regiment of Spearlings charge out into that enemy unit there. And really, I don't want to throw anything at the Dogs of War. I don't want to fight them in combat, especially at the front. That's just a nightmare. Wouldn't do anything. So I might as well go for a unit I could potentially hurt and just have a go. And we'll see how that goes. Slow down that advance. In the middle you can see the Spearlings and the Iron Beast are working their way up while being wind blasted. The Soul Reavers have put themselves in a position to be charged, and they're inviting the charge now, in fact, and the Duke is still saying, jump on this wall and fight me. And there's that charge there. That didn't do much. So, the Honour Guard do move backwards, which means that only 1 enemy unit will be in charge range of them, I think. So you can see they're level with the woods now, whereas before they were ahead. Although this picture was actually taken as my opponent was starting to move his units, which is why that unit have come forward a bit now. And you can see that I'm getting closer to those archers, but will I get there with all that wind blast around? We'll see. And one option, obviously, to mitigate the effect of wind blast is to run around some kind of individual behind your unit and just sit them there so that the big unit can't be blasted backwards. But I don't really have anyone to spare in that role at the moment with the way everything's positioned. Turn 3 for the enemy Rhordia. So there's a counter charge here onto my Spearlings. So you can see it looks like I only did 3 damage there. Over here, the Halfling Range Cavalry charge the Soul Reavers, and the Ancient Duke makes a hindered charge into my Duke. So I'm fairly happy with that. I think I should be able to kill the Halfling Range Cavalry easily on the counter charge with Soul Reavers, and the Duke battle is going to be fairly even. And you can see all those units have positioned themselves so that whichever one of those 2 I charge at the front, I will still be hindered by that wall. So of course that's good planning on the part of my opponent there, and the unit behind are angled in such a way that I won't be able to charge them, because that would have just been a terrible move to allow me to charge the unit behind and get out of everyone else's line of sight, which would have then meant turning round. He's also positioned the back unit in such a way so that if I just go directly forwards as fast as I can, I don't think I would be able to for a start, because I think I may end up going within an inch of the enemy, but even if I don't, I think that unit at the back would have an angle on my flank, which would be bad news all the way. Archers against Spearlings, not much accomplished there. However, my Master Sergeant does become wavered as a result of some kind of attack, and this unit of Spearlings are wavered as well, which isn't nice. Duke takes 2 damage from his fellow Duke, who's a bit more ancient, and obviously the Soul Reavers didn't take anything at all. We're on to turn 3 for me. Now look at that. This is going to give me nightmares. So, Soul Reavers, dish out the pain to the Halfling Ranger Cavalry. Double 1. Do I use my tournament reroll once per game on Halfling Ranger Cavalry troop, who are no threat to the Soul Reavers whatsoever, and that horde there are actually out, I think it's a regiment actually, I believe they're out of range to attack my Soul Reavers anyway with the center point of the unit when they bounce off a full inch. And even if they're not great at fighting either. Do I use that reroll here when it could come up in some crucial combat later. I choose not to use it now and think, well, I'll just kill them next turn. I'm not in that much of a rush because the Soul Reavers are safe at the moment. It's not critical, so I'll just wait. We'll see whether that decision comes back to bite me. And Duke on Duke action. It's going to be very slow, this, because they've got Iron Resolve and they don't have that many attacks each. The Ancient one obviously has slightly more. And over here, I throw my Spearling Regiment into the Dogs of War because I don't want them getting into the Soul Reaver and Duke territory just yet. So I'm just slowing them down, throwing a bit of a speed bump in their way. And the Halfling Archers and the Iron Beast. They waver that unit there, that's more of the hard-hitting infantry unit. Get them up to 10 damage, and a waver. Very nice. My Spearlings are finally able to charge into those pesky archers at the other end of the table. Get them up to 8 damage, but can't remove them. So, it's going to be difficult to kill them now, because I'm constantly going to be making hindered charges, because they're not going to charge me, because that would be crazy. And then there's 2 sorcerers around with Drain Life who can take health from my unit and apply it back to the archers. So we'll see if I can win out in the War of Attrition. My Honour Guard moved backwards again. So there's no way of escaping from enemy charge range now, so 1 unit will be able to charge them regardless, but I'm fairly confident the Honour Guard will survive a frontal charge from a very mediocre unit. No reason why they shouldn't. And turn 4. So the mediocre unit do charge into the Honour Guard, and the other 2 are just positioned around afterwards. So I've got them into kind of my domain in the woods where the Honour Guard will not be hindered ever, and the other units will. So that's where I want to be fighting, not on that pesky wall up there, but it is in my half. So in that respect, my opponent has got the advantage. And look at that, that's a double charge onto my Spearling regiment there. Horde of Dogs of War in the front and a regiment in the flank. A feeble regiment though, but it's still going to be enough to wipe them out. And you can see the Drain Life coming into effect already. Some damage applied to my Horde and applied back in health form to the archers. Okay, and here there's just a bit of positioning going on. Repositioning. Because I think the Iron Beast is looking in this direction, so they don't want to be flanked by him, I think is the logic there. You can see the Battle Shrine perched on top of that dice almost. I don't think it would stand up in the right place, but it's supposed to be on the hill. It did actually fall over at one point and the top fell off it. So that's just what happens with these big, unwieldy models. I've suffered plenty of broken models in my time. Not yet with this army, although it's only a matter of time until some of the metal spears come off, I think. I've bent quite a few of them already. I managed to bend them back into shape, but that does generally tend to weaken the metal over time, so we'll see if any of them end up breaking off. And there is a death, and it's that regiment there, Spearlings, that get shot, dead. And the volley gun, at the 3rd time of asking, the Master Sergeant, who is mounted on the horse, does actually kill the volley gun. And 4 damage to the Honour Guard from that unit there, which I'm not concerned about at all, because on the counter charge I'll kill them. And then we'll see what I can do after that, whether I've got anything up my sleeve. The other regiment of Spearlings get killed here as well, but I needed to tie those units up. Turn 4 for me. Would you believe it? The Soul Reavers do a zillion more damage onto the Range Cavalry, and a different set of dice this time, double one them again. Again, I decided not to use the reroll because it's such a non-critical fight, this. Because the enemy aren't in a position to attack my Soul Reavers right now. So I think I'll just leave it one more turn. And I'm thinking maybe I should have just used it last turn, and now the Soul Reavers could be helping out elsewhere. But it's too late for that, so I think using it the first time was the right time, looking back, but the second time I don't think it would make that much difference. Brian loves these watching at work. Good thing I'm good at multitasking. Well, I hope you're not like an air traffic controller or something equally important that requires your full attention at all times, and you're actually just looking at battle reports. So the Duke decided not to go back into the enemy Duke because he had a view on this regiment here, and it would have meant that I ended up outside the charge arc of the Ancient Duke, so I couldn't be charged by him, which is good. So into that unit, couldn't kill them though. Archers, what do? Chip away at the Dogs of War. Why not? Spearlings get those archers back up to 10. Very disappointing, and it's going to be difficult to shift them. Honor Guard do kill the unit that was fighting them, and then they back up, and I think they go a full 3, which means that only one enemy unit can actually see them through the woods now. The other one can't see through because they're not in the woods, and that unit right in front of them can see. But when they charge in, I'm fairly confident the Honor Guard can stand up to a single round of combat against them. Iron Beast charged in and killed that regiment that had turned to face it out in the open. It was already partly dead anyway. And you can see how it's looking over here now. This is after this enemy turn 5 now, as you can see by the dice there. So, the Ancient Duke has flown off up there. My Duke has been killed, and the Soul Reavers are still stuck fighting that cavalry unit. So maybe I should have used the reroll the second time as well, but I think it's kind of stubbornness in the end. I didn't want to have to use a reroll on such a feeble unit when there may be something bigger and juicier that could have benefited from that reroll. It just shows you though, don't hang on to it, because if there's something that might be important and you think, well, maybe I'll get a double 1 on that big horde near the end of the game, you might not. So it's a tricky one. So the Honor Guard are going to take a bit of damage there, but hopefully not much, and the other unit moved into the woods, so they are a threat at this stage. And not much going on in the centre, just a bit of milling around of units. Bit of damage done to my horde with shooting. The Honor Guard take barely any damage, so they're going to be fine. And there's my Duke fighting there. You couldn't see him in the other picture actually, so he's still alive at this stage. But the Dogs of War are facing towards my Soul Reavers. So now my turn 5. So the Duke, he went back in there, I think. Let's see. So if the Duke had been able to fly after this combat, then he could have flank charged the Dogs of War, I think, there. But he took damage in combat, so he's not nimble. So with only a single pivot, there was no way he could get into them. So turn 5, the Duke back in there gets a bit of damage on that unit, but not enough. And the Dogs of War take a tiny bit more damage from shooting. The Iron Beast kills the Battle Shrine that was perched on the hill, so he's done alright. Killed a couple of units now, and he's in a position to threaten the enemy over there. Soul Reavers at the 3rd attempt do manage to kill a troop of Halfling Ranger cavalry, and that's very pleasing. But of course they have to put themselves in a position where they can be flank charged by the Ancient Duke now, unfortunately. So should have used that reroll early on. Archers taking damage from my Spearlings again, but I can't quite finish them off. I mean, because if I could kill them, I would have a horde sitting pretty in the enemy half of the table on the invade scenario, which would be nice. The Honor Guard kill that unit on the counter-charge and turn to face the other one. And really, I'm in a bit of a dilemma here, because I want to get into the enemy half of the table with this Honor Guard horde, because they're going to score me a lot of points. Even just in terms of the tournament points as well, they would get me 1 bonus tournament point for having a unit in the opponent's half. But if I turn them to face that way now, they'll be flank charged by that unit there. Which wouldn't be fun considering they're already on 4 damage, even though it's a hindered charge. I think in the flank it may still be enough to kill them. So I kind of have to stay facing this way, even though they can either charge me in the front or block me up with that character and prevent me turning and heading towards the enemy half. Over here, the Dogs of War need to do something soon so that Iron Beast doesn't catch up with them. And there's how it's looking on this side. So it's still not over, but I need the Soul Reavers not to die, ideally. Turn 6. So the Honor Guard are going to get clogged up by this Master Sergeant. And the Soul Reavers I would expect them to die from this. An Ancient Duke in the flank who's going to have 14 attacks there, and the Dogs of War in the front, probably going to be enough to kill them. And over here, just more shuffling round. That unit actually decided not to attack the Honour Guard because they're being blocked and they want to just score and not get killed as a scoring regiment there. Makes sense. The Duke takes more damage from that unit. The Honour Guard take 1 point of damage. And the Dogs of War and the Ancient Duke kill the Soul Reavers. So really should have used that reroll earlier on and then still been a force impacting this game. But instead decided to save it for a better moment that never came. So now we're on to, I think we must be on my turn now because the Duke has killed off that unit by the looks of it. The Iron Beast is moving around. Now the Iron Beast has moved into a position. He didn't want to charge into the front of the Dogs of War, hitting on 6s. That would be a bad move in my view. So he's just moved guaranteed into the enemy half, so he's scoring points at the moment and he can still flame them, so why not? And the Honour Guard, they're only able to waver that character. Wow, 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 wow. The Master Sergeant, with his Ensnare ability, I was still confident I would do enough to kill him, but only a waver. Very disappointing there, Honour Guard. In the middle you can see that my Spearling Horde have been killed by now, so chances of victory are looking very, very slim at this stage. And that is in fact the end of the game. We do not get a turn 7, and had there been a turn 7, what would have happened? Well, the Honour Guard surely would have killed that Master Sergeant on my turn, but then wouldn't have been able to make it into the enemy half because that would have required a turn, which they couldn't make. My Iron Beast may well have got killed, potentially. But it probably would have survived, I suppose, because he wouldn't have wanted to chase after it with expensive units that are scoring. So, yeah, I didn't need turn 7 to have any chance, but it was only extremely, extremely slim. And there we go, that one's over. So, at the end of that game, I didn't manage to get that much killing done. But my opponent didn't either. Neither one of us killed half of our opponent's armies. That's 2 games in a row now, where at least half of both armies is still alive at the end. So I'm going to rack up 1 bonus victory point for having the Iron Beast in a scoring position, and 2 bonus kill points. Right, so heading into game 4. Now in the leaderboard at this moment I believe I'm about 5th or 6th. I'm on table 3. So, this game, this is going to be Plunder. So, and I'm against Ratkin. The 5 objectives, the 5 loot tokens which you can pick up, are placed in the middle of, on the centre line of the table, and then you each nominate 1 that's going to be worth 2 victory points to hold at the end. So as you can see, the 2 that were nominated are green, and the ones that are only worth 1 are blue. I had to pick 1 first to nominate to be worth more, which is unfortunate because I would have liked to spread this game out a bit, because the Ratkin get bonuses for having all the hordes near to each other. So it's a very compact army, so I would like to force the game to totally spread out, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. So I'm just going to be faced with a huge wall of nerve, basically. So we'll see what I can do about that. So on my right flank, as you can look at it there, so we've got the volley gun down here in the corner, Spearlings with the Honour Guard behind, because I don't want the Honour Guard to get stuck in a fight with the Ratkin front lines, because they're going to throw slaves forward first and then the hard-hitting units are behind, so I don't want the Honour Guard to be the first thing to take the full force of those more powerful units. Archers and another volley gun there, because the enemy are going to have to come forward onto the objectives to pick them up. Soul Reavers behind a regiment of Spearlings there. My Duke is really just to protect against. Let me just open up the army list of this Ratkin army. There we go, so what's it called? The Demon Spawn. It's a giant evil rat demon that's incredibly powerful and flies. 13 attacks, which is a lot for a flying monster. You don't normally get that many. Even dragons don't tend to have that many attacks. So, I'm worried about that, and when you see where that's positioned, you'll see why I wanted the Duke to counter it, so it can't just hold back everything I've got willy-nilly. if it's going to threaten me, I'm going to be able to threaten it back with the Duke, who's not nearly as good, but he is as fast. And over on this flank, I've just got the troop of scouts, because, again, there's objectives over there that could be worth picking up, so I want to pick up that one directly in front of them and then just survive the game, hopefully, and that could be a difference between winning and losing at the end, or maybe turn it into a draw. The opposing army, we have a horde of the Blight at the front there, the kind of beige ones. They're fairly easily colour-coded, the army, so you should be able to tell what they are. Behind them there's shock troops and a weapon team, and another weapon team next to them. So all the weapon teams are basically Ratkin war trombones, for all intents and purposes. There is the demon spawn. On the other side, there are 2 hordes of slaves and a regiment of slaves on the front lines. Behind them we have another horde of shock troops, another horde of the Blight. The Blight are the ones that have ensnare, by the way, so they're a bit of a nightmare. There is another weapon team out on the right. There are some characters dancing around there, and what's the shooter unit in the back corner called? They are claw shots. So 36-inch range, piercing 2, and they hit on 4s as well with 5 attacks. So good for just a bit of precision damage at long range. Very nice. And very compact army. Lots of nerve. At the start of the event, the 2 kinds of army that I thought I would struggle against, typically with my Rhordians, would be lots of manoeuvrability, because that's something I don't have a lot of. Any units that can just kind of fly around everywhere, land in amongst my lines, which, as I was talking about before, my tactics have been designed to kind of mitigate enemies landing behind my lines and doing damage, so a bit more compact setup when needed, and working on countering enemy flyers rather than going off on my own missions and allowing them to kind of run free. And armies like this are another one that I was concerned about, just walls of endless nerve with mediocre defence, because I've got those volley guns with their piercing 2, it's going to be totally wasted on the slaves who are defence 2, so not going to be getting that many hits on them. So we'll see. I mean, it's pretty obvious what the Ratkin want to do here. They want the slaves to run forwards and probably fight me and eventually die, but by that time something else has picked up the tokens and run off. So we'll see whether that comes to fruition, because I don't think they just want to march forward and get into an endless fight in range of all my shooting when they don't have to, because their shooting is definitely more short range than mine. So you can see the tokens, that one out on the far left is going to be totally ignored, no one's anywhere near it, and it's only worth 1. Turn 1 for my opponent, so he elects to go first, and you can see why, because he can immediately pick up 3 of the tokens, including the 2 valuable ones, with his slaves and with the Blight on the left there. So immediately picking them up, so that means in turn 2 he could just drop them and pick them up with other units. So easy to see why he wanted to go first. Had I been able to go first, I would have advanced certain units as far up as they could go, with in mind that I want to counter this strategy. And maybe he wouldn't have advanced so far, knowing that he would immediately take a charge if he was going second. So getting first was quite a big deal, because they are all speed 6, so they can reach those objectives in the centre immediately. So a bit of damage plinked onto my volley gun from his claw shots. And another one takes damage. I think this was the demon spawn has a ranged attack. Let's see what it is. Demon spawn has lightning bolt 5. He also has rallying as well. He's an absolute beast, this demon spawn. Really good. So slaves pick up the really valuable tokens, and the Blight pick up one of the 1-point objectives. Turn 1 for Rhordia. So the advance is on. The Spearlings are heading up there. Really, I'm just going to have to try and chew through those slaves as fast as possible and then chase after the other units that are undoubtedly going to have the objectives by the time I get there. But you have to be careful, because the Blight and the shock troops, I mean, let's have a look at their stats. They are actually good at fighting. The shock troops, for example, have elite and vicious with crushing strength 1, and they have 25 attacks. The Blight they have stealthy and ensnare, so shooting them is going to be difficult. The Blight, they have 30 attacks, and they hit on 4s, so they're pretty solid at fighting as well. Shock troops, obviously the scariest ones, and the weapon teams, the essentially war trombones, are very scary. So I can't just throw myself forward as fast as I can and put myself in range of all these hard-hitting units, because Honour Guard are only defense 5. They would not like to be flamed by those breath weapons or charged by the shock troops. So everyone moving up as fast as they can, apart from the Duke, who's positioned himself entirely in a position to counter the Demon Spawn. So if the Demon Spawn charges to my left and attacks either that unit, that regiment of Spearlings, or the volley gun, then the Duke will have a line on it and will be able to charge in and at the very least slow it down. You can see my scouts on the left there moving towards that objective. My volley gun does actually have a clear shot at the Demon Spawn because it's height 4, so the volley gun can see over all the height 1 rats and shoot it, and does actually plink 4 damage on it, which is a good start. And the other shooting attacks, miscellaneous units, there's volley guns, there's archers, there's Master Sergeant all around the place. And 4 damage plinked onto that horde of slaves there, and 10 damage onto the other horde of slaves. So that is a decent start. There's also 3 onto the regiment on the right there from the volley gun. So I'm going to have to chew through these things fast. So getting a good start on the damage there, that's going to help. And in the chat, the Wargamer Viking has joined us. Hello there. Hope you're going to pick up some red hot sizzling tactical tips from this video, if you ever decide to play Kings of War again. And turn 2. So the Spearling Horde are charged by the slaves who have dropped their token, which is going to be picked up by the Blight, who are just hiding behind the hill. So that's all he wants to do, really. And what I can do next time, I believe I've got the Honour Guard in a position where they can then charge along with the Spearlings on the counter-charge. He's charged his other horde of slaves into the front of my Spearling regiment in the woods, so it's not really going to do anything to them. He shouldn't anyway. And back there you can see the shock troops have dropped their less valuable token onto the Blight. And if the shock troops come forward and fight, it's going to be tough to chew through them. The Blight are very difficult to kill as well. They can back away. It's going to be difficult to win the scenario, but I've just got to keep trying to chew through, trying to spot opportunities where I can possibly get into favourable positions and slow down their retreat. And look at that. That is a finger pointing. And something is dead. What is dead? That'll be the volley gun that the Demon Spawn was throwing his lightning bolts at. So kind of in the middle. And look at this. You make a plan and then something like this happens. 3 damage onto the Spearling Horde, wavered with a 6/6, which means that the Honour Guard are stuck in there and can't charge that horde of slaves on the hill. So this is potentially really bad. It was already going to be a tough enough ask to chew through these really terrible units at the front and then get to the good juicy stuff at the back and kill them in time to get the objectives, and this has just slowed everything down more. This is like the nightmare scenario here. This is worse than the Spearlings being killed, definitely. Okay, and over here not much is done there, as you can imagine. Into an ensnaring unit and hindered. Very little is going to be accomplished there. And the Demon Spawn, because I would assume it's because he's got lightning bolt abilities and the Duke is around, he hasn't thrust himself into combat yet. Turn 2 for my army, the Rhordians. What does this little shooting battery do here? Well, whittling away at that slave horde because I can't possibly charge them in combat. However, the Soul Reavers and the Spearling regiment have ploughed into that shock troop horde in the middle, because I just want to get in there now. I can't afford to let them run away, and I need to advance up the table, so they've got to go in, got to take the risk. And I've positioned the Duke around here as well to threaten, so that if the Demon Spawn up there in the top left decides to get involved, I'll be able to throw the Duke in there and somewhat even the odds. Not hugely even the odds, he's only about half as powerful as that creature, but he will help. And 12 damage done to that horde, which isn't going to be enough because they just have very high nerve, and then they also rally each other as well. Let's have a look at the nerve here. So shock troops are 20, 22. The blight are dash 21, so you can't even waver the blight. But the blight are mainly at the back, so I'm not worried about them at the moment. Over here, my scouts are moving up towards that objective that they want to pick up. So they're hoping they'll just be able to get that and then just hide and get me a point. In the middle here, the Iron Beast and the regiment of Spearlings do a fair bit of damage to that horde, but not enough to kill it yet. So there's how it's looking, and you can see the Honour Guard being jammed up is very annoying. So I have repositioned the Honour Guard slightly, I think. I think I'd moved them a teensy bit. But I thought, I had the option, obviously, of just turning sideways and heading over into the middle with them instead. But I thought, you know what? I'm just going to stay here. I'm confident that he's not going to waver my horde of Spearlings 2 turns in a row. We'll see if that risk pays off. Turn 3 for the Ratkin. So the weapon team kills my scouts by entering the woods and fiery rat death to the face. They are dead. So there's that bit of the strategy gone. Over here, the shock troops decide to countercharge into the Ensnare regiment rather than the Soul Reavers. I wasn't 100% sold on that idea. And over here, damage was fired with a weapon team that was behind the slaves on the hill. So the weapon team is on the hill, the slaves are technically not on the hill because they've only got less than 50% of the unit on the hill, so the weapon team was able to shoot the Honour Guard and do a bit of damage there. So this unit in the middle does become wavered. The slaves countercharge them rather than the Iron Beast. So a waver going on there. And this unit gets wavered as well. But I'm not really concerned by that. I would have been more concerned had they countercharged the Soul Reavers, because that's going to be a very critical unit for me, I think. I need those killer units to survive. So that's how it looks at the end of that turn, and you can see the loot carrying units just going backwards as fast as they can, which is 3 inches, without turning round, obviously. However, I'm going to make an important tactical choice in the next turn, and that is to somewhat ignore, to some extent, ignore the enemy hordes, especially the back ones, not worry about chasing them down right now, and I want to kill the weapon teams because they're going to be a nightmare, and I know exactly how dangerous they are from using war trombones with the goblins. At some point you have to say, right, that's it, they're not going to get any more shots off, they're going to die, and halfway through the game they're going to be in range for the rest of the game shooting at me if I don't kill them, so I might as well do it now. And I have the opportunity to do so because they're currently on a hill, and I've got lots of shooter units down there in the bottom right who can target that one on the hill there. The one on the left, which is in the woods off the shot right now, is in range for the Soul Reavers to attack it with a pivot. They can pivot away from that horde there because they weren't countercharged, and I can go and attack that weapon team in the woods. The Wargamer Viking says, "You attending Chillcon this weekend?" I'm not. I'm attending Franticon this weekend, which is very, very far away from Chillcon. Franticon being in London for a Dead Zone, Kings of War, and Dreadball triple tournament extravaganza. So that's going to be exciting. So the Duke is still positioned right there. You can see him at the bottom in the centre, and if you imagine with your mind's eye, what can he see? Well, he's actually got just about line of sight on that weapon team in the centre, just to the left of the house at the back there. He can just see it. We got the lasers out to confirm, and that means I've been looking for a place that he could land in enemy lines where he would be safe. And it's difficult because obviously if you're landing with a normal move you have to be an inch away from the enemy, but if you're charging something you don't have to worry about such trivialities. So he's going to charge in there. I would expect to kill it and then overrun, which means he would be outside of every enemy available charge arc, so the Duke would be safe and in among enemy lines looking down the flank of his hordes that are carrying the expensive tokens. So that's what I want to do next turn. I want to target his weapon teams and kill all of them. And here we go. So the Honour Guard have the... Let's just go back here, because the Honour Guard, at this stage, because the horde of slaves in the centre countercharged into my Spearling Regiment, instead of the Iron Beast, they are actually in range to be flank charged by the Honour Guard now. When my horde of Spearlings on the right countercharge, that makes the space big enough for the Honour Guard to charge into the flank of that unit. So that's what the Honour Guard do. They take that flank, massacre the slaves, and now it's time to start making a beeline for the rest of the enemies. And the Duke, I went through the little plan that he concocted. He took out that weapons team, and now he's in a really good position, unhurt, staring into the enemy, and if they just keep going backwards slowly, he's going to be able to flank charge their units and inflict mass damage, hopefully. And if nothing else, just charging into the flank of them, that's going to stop them going backwards for a turn at the very least. Well, then they could just keep going backwards and just repeatedly get flank charged, I suppose. Then, over here, the Soul Reavers. So another reason I thought it would be a bold yet good move to go for the weapon team in the woods. Even though I would be hindered, I was confident it would still be enough to kill them because they're tripling their attacks against a war machine, so why the hell not? And not only that, but they're also in the woods now, so they can pivot to get all the enemies either not looking at them at all or in their front, so anyone that wants to charge them is now going to be hindered by those woods, including the demon spawn. So going in a hindered charge into a defense 6 unit, that makes them a lot safer than out in the open. And my regiment of Spearlings there in the middle that were wavered just went backwards so that I would be able to get some nice cover-free shots with the Master Sergeant, and the Iron Beast there as well I think was also in range to flame them, so they're taking more damage this turn. Over on that side, my horde of Spearlings finishes off the enemy slaves that were opposite, that wavered me earlier on, and in terms of just pure killing, it's actually looking really good at this stage, but in terms of the scenario, it's still very dicey because my opponent is holding way more objectives. I'm not holding any right now. And oh, there's an even wider shot, so you can see almost the whole battlefield. You can see all the units that are really relevant. I think you might be able to see everything actually. You can just about see the Soul Reavers there, in the bottom left. So, enemy still with plenty of hordes, but they're a little bit more on the ropes now. They've lost all 3 of their weapon teams because the other one that was on the hill was gunned down by all my massed firepower that I targeted in that direction. So all the breath weapons are dead. It's just these hordes and the demon spawn to worry about now, and a couple of individuals who are really just going to be speed bumps because that regiment of slaves on the left aren't going to hold up to anything. Turn 4 for the rats and the claw shots. They get rid of my volley gun that was opposite them, which is okay because the volley gun was kind of taken out the game at this stage because everyone's running away and it's too slow to get there. The shock troops kill off my wavered regiment of Spearlings now, so they're dead. And over here, so initially the demon spawn moved to the left, which meant that he was looking into the flank of the Soul Reavers, but the Soul Reavers would have been able to charge out into the blight that are just off the screen at the top and be out of the charge arc of the demon spawn. So he decided the much better move, which I agree with, was to fly straight ahead and then turn round backwards. So if the Soul Reavers want to do anything in that direction, then they're going to have him to contend with. Turn 4 for me, because everything else is just backing away for the... In fact, I didn't take a picture of it, but the 2 hordes that the Duke was looking into the flanks of, they've actually turned round to face the Duke now, which is a bit of a game changer, because I've stopped their retreat. So, in my turn, you can see actually how tight we're getting on time here. I'm playing really fast at the moment because time's getting so short. I've got 11 minutes 30 left. My opponent, with 2 turns left for him to play, is down to 4 minutes 24. So there's been lots of kind of angling shenanigans going on because of the positioning of the units that we've had going on. It's been it's like a chess match almost. So the Honour Guard kill an individual that was positioned in front of them as a speed bump and just keep going, which is okay, but it does slow them down, so it's done its job. And the Iron Beast is moving up and flames into the flank of that unit of shock troops, just slowly chipping away at them. I need to get damage on them before I get into combat, so I have a chance of actually killing them because they're carrying the valuable tokens. And the Duke, instead, because they turned to face him, he didn't want to just charge headlong into their front. He decided to just fly behind them, so he also has a charge angle on the claw shots in the top right there as well. And if they want to turn around and face the Duke again, that means they're going to get rear-charged by the Honour Guard, probably, and the Iron Beast, maybe. So they don't want to be turning away from those units. So they're kind of stuck a little bit. They may have to turn backwards and head that way and then use the individual to block up the Honour Guard again, so they'll have no individuals left after that. And the Iron Beast, I think, would be out of charge range, but you could still chase after them, breath attacking them. But then the Duke can keep dancing around still. So I've improved my position with that move from the Duke. Over here, my thought now was that the Soul Reavers, if they charge into the front of the Blight, who have Ensnare and they can't be wavered, they're dash 21, that's really high nerve for an ensnaring horde, and I'm coming out of cover, so it's going to be a hindered charge as well. That is not worth it. It's not worth throwing the Soul Reavers away, because I would get rear-charged by a Demon Spawn who would then be up to 39 attacks, who would absolutely destroy them. So there's no point doing it. So instead, to keep this Demon Spawn tied up, because I don't want him messing with my plans on the important side of the table where the valuable objectives are, I'm just going to turn the Soul Reavers around a bit so that they can see him, so that he has to make a choice. Does he want to charge them? Does he want to manoeuvre himself around again? He's so expensive, and he's so valuable at this stage of the game, because there's nothing really to fight for over here. That 1 point objective isn't going to make a difference, because I just need to kill the units on the right. Or the rat, shall we say. And bits of damage have appeared on some of my units there. I don't know if that's new, I think that's just me positioning. So I've moved my volley gun down there at the bottom into the woods so it can see through, because it wants to shoot at that unit of shock troops there at some point. And the Master Sergeant is in there to do shooting as well, because I just want to shoot down things on that side, because I'm not going to be able to catch them with anything other than the Soul Reavers, who are distracting at the moment. Turn 5. So they decide they are going to turn around, the hordes, and head in that direction towards the Duke, carrying the tokens with them. But forcing them to turn round slowly has hopefully slowed their retreat sufficiently so that I'll be able to catch them. I think I will need turn 7 to catch them, but we shall see. And the Horde of Blight have turned away from the Soul Reavers there, and they're heading over in this direction to help. If I'm going to be chasing behind the two important units, then he wants a unit that can then come in and attack the flank of particularly the Iron Beast if it gets there. The claw shots, what do? A bit more damage onto the Honour Guard, who are also blocked in by an individual. And the Demon Spawn decides, you know what, I've had enough of this dancing around. I'm a killer rat from hell. I'm just going to charge into those Soul Reavers in the woods. Who cares about being hindered? But he only does 6 damage to them, so they're not going to die. That high defense really helps him there, because I think he's crushing strength 3, is he? Let's see. Yes, he is. Crushing 3, so he's still not wounding them on 2s, so that defense 6 really comes in handy there. And you can see how it looks. So at this stage, I don't know if you can see in the corner, my opponent is about to press something on the chess clock. I think he was pausing it so I could take a photo, but he's only got 32 seconds left with 1 turn to play. So I'm confident he's not going to have enough time to actually complete an attack on any of my units. So I don't have to worry about being in position to be charged, really, because if he's going to charge anyone, it would be the Iron Beast in the flank, probably, with the Blight on the left. So he wouldn't have time to complete that many attacks in 32 seconds. I'm fairly confident of that, so I don't have to worry about that at all. I can just head straight forward with the Iron Beast and the Honour Guard. I'm just going to try and destroy that character and overrun as far as possible and just get far up the table. So my turn 5. The Duke kills the claw shot unit in the corner and just turns to face the 2 rat units there, so he can potentially help in a minute when I want to try and kill them. The Honour Guard overrun the individual, of course, by massacring it, managed to not double one it, which is nice, and keep going. The Iron Beast moves forward, and I can't remember, I think he probably moves at the double rather than breath attack at this stage, because I will need to chase them down and fight them. And there's how it's looking on the crucial side of the table. Over here, the Soul Reavers actually kill the Demon Spawn on the countercharge, which is really big as well, because now potentially they can come in and help. They could kill that horde there, and I suppose if they do kill that horde and steal the token, I would only need to kill one of the other hordes and steal that token to win 3-2 on points. So we'll see. There's how it's looking. And 32 seconds for my opponent left on the clock there. It looks like I've got 7 minutes 16 for my final turn, so I've really been speeding up my play at the end because I need time, because I'm going to have to make a lot of attacks if I do catch them. Turn 6 for my opponent, so what does he have time to do? Well, he runs away towards the board edge with both units. In fact, look at this, you can see live action of them being placed down there with their tokens. So they just run away as far as they can, and that's all he has time to do in that time. Look, 0 seconds. So he doesn't have time to do anything else, just has time to run away with those 2 units and then hope we don't get to turn 7, because if it ends on turn 6 I won't be able to catch them. So my turn 6 I actually got closer to them, but we were getting close to the end of the round now, and I still had quite a bit of time left, so I was not taking pictures, I was just trying to play as fast as possible, because if the round ended it wouldn't matter if I had time left on the clock. So I moved everything up as far as it could go, and then we had the turn 7 roll. I was in charge range with all my units to attack those 2 hordes, and we did get a turn 7. So because my opponent didn't get time for a turn 7 because he timed out, he wasn't able to turn his units round, so I was able to get rear charge with the Honour Guard, a flank charge with the Duke, rear charge with the Iron Beast, and rear charge with the Soul Reavers, with about 6 minutes to resolve it all, because the Soul Reavers had ploughed through the back of the Blight Horde that were running away from them, because they didn't have time to move either because of the clock. So yes, on turn 7 everything piled in, we did get turn 7 and killed off both those hordes there that you can see in the picture, and stole all their tokens and won the game. So if we had not got a turn 7, it would have been a loss. My opponent played that one strategy pretty damn well to get to within a 50-50 dice roll of winning the game, with 2 hordes hiding. If the game had ended on turn 6, he would have just won. He had 2 valuable objectives. I only had the one the Soul Reavers took on turn 6. So it would have been 4-1 to him on victory points, and the dice came up with a 6, I think, for the turn 7, so we did get the turn 7, and I was able to annihilate them all with my remaining 6 minutes or so. I had plenty of time to do my attacks. So that was a heart attack inducing game, if ever there was one, but anytime it comes down to a 50-50 dice roll to essentially decide the game, you know that it's been close. In terms of killing, obviously, I was doing well, but that wasn't really my opponent's plan. He wasn't trying to kill my army as such. He was trying to play the scenario, picked up the objectives, ran away, and it very nearly worked. If he hadn't timed out, he would have been able to turn these units round in turn 7 and taken frontal charges instead from the Iron Beast and the Soul Reavers. It would have been a frontal charge into the shock troops. So I think that still would have been enough, the Soul Reavers and the Iron Beast, to kill that unit, hopefully, in one round of combat. And on the other side, the Blight with the Honour Guard would have been a bit more complicated, because the Honour Guard would have been ensnared by the Blight, but the Duke would have still been in the flank. So I don't think they would have been able to position themselves to get both of them in the front. Possibly, though. So I think it's very likely that at least the unit on the left would have died. So I think even if he'd been able to turn them round, I don't think it would have made too much difference. I think the fact that there was a turn 7 was the big deal in determining who won and lost. So at the end I did actually kill every single unit, which is the first time for a long time in a tournament where I've completely tabled an opponent, and I only lost barely any units either. I mean, I only lost a few. I think I lost Spearling Regiment, I might have lost both of those, and Volley Gun, and not a whole lot else. I think I lost a couple of volley guns. Yeah, so not much at all, really. It was, in terms of the scenario, ridiculously close, though, just not in terms of kill points. So I got tons of points there. I got +3 victory point bonus for the tournament because I held on to 3 tokens. As far as tournament point bonuses, it doesn't matter if the tokens were worth 1 or 2, they're just worth 1 each for the tournament point bonus. It's just the scenario where they're worth 2. So a 23 points for that game. The first game I picked up 24, and the game 2 I picked up 19 for that win, so that one was lower. And obviously the game I lost, game 3, I only picked up 8. So I wasn't sure where I was going to be in the final standings, because obviously when you're on table 3 and you get a massive win in the last round, you expect that should be enough to propel you into one of the top positions. So that's nice. And let's see what happened. Boom, there we go. It is the second place trophy for the Coming Storm put on by the Northern Kings, the 17th of March 2019. Now, there is a slight asterisk next to this second place trophy because the spare player actually finished at the top of the leaderboard, which meant that he wasn't eligible for a trophy. So the person who got the first place trophy, in the official rankings standings, the person who got the first place trophy will be listed as second and I will be listed as third, which is fine by me because that's still a podium finish. And in some ways, weirdly, second place is perhaps almost the best place to be in that situation, because finishing first, you have a nice trophy. But if it was me, if it's someone that's got loads of first place trophies, it's fine. But if it was me and I had to say, here's the first ever first place trophy I've got, oh, but technically I didn't finish first, it was just the spare player who finished first, and I just got the trophy because he wasn't allowed it because he was a spare player. If that was my first place trophy, I think that would be kind of weird. And finishing third in that situation would have meant, well, technically I finished fourth, which isn't a podium spot, so the trophy that also has a bit of an asterisk. But with the second place, then third place is still a podium, so it would still have generated a trophy for the cabinet. So if you look at it in that kind of weird, skewed manner, then that's arguably one of the best spots to be in under the circumstances. So I'm very happy with that, obviously, considering the first time I took the Rhordia to a tournament, they finished last. And this keeps up my record. Every Northern Kings tournament so far, I have got a placing trophy. I got third, second, last, and now second trophy, or third if you look at it on the official rankings. So, what can possibly happen next time? That remains to be seen whether I can keep that streak going, but that's quite a tasty record. The trophy cabinet continues to grow. Second place, very happy with that. And there I am in action there, in a bit of a weird pose. The picture was taken, obviously, while I was in action, moving some of my models around during Game 1. You get a full view of the glorious headgear there. And let's look at my thoughts on the list now then. Let's see here. I've got my document in my hand. If anyone wants to add anything to the chat, any questions on this while I'm still broadcasting, because I'll be ending this very, very soon, then feel free to get them in now. Any questions on the list or any of the games? So the list. The Spearling formation, solid, does its job. It's not too expensive, and it did its job in pretty much all the games there. It did what I asked it to do. Halfling archers, I'm not 100% sold on them anymore, now that they're irregular, and I was struggling for unlock slots in this list because I took a really expensive allied unit. So having the archers in there, I'm not sure. I might try something without them at some point. The scouts actually did a good job. They effectively won me game number 2 by sitting on an objective for the whole game. But there are other choices in the list. They're really there because of the amount of points I had left over. They're the cheapest unit that I considered worth taking. Then we've got the Honor Guard, pretty much a must-have because they're so tasty. The Army Standard Bearer, can't really argue with that. Someone to inspire everyone with the loot. Pretty standard stuff. The Duke, I still prefer him to the Ancient one because he still does a good job, but he's not too expensive. So I like him. The Iron Beast, it's hit and miss. It's very survivable. It does a good job. I like having one in there. I'm not sure about whether I'd go back to taking 2 in the same list. And maybe in some circumstances. The volley guns obviously are amazing. And the Soul Reaver Cavalry are obviously the big change in this list compared to previous tournaments. because I wanted something more hard-hitting, and I didn't have another unit of Honour Guard to take. And as far as that goes, I think they did a pretty damn good job. In that last game was probably their finest hour, when I was able to use them to take out a weapon team, heavily damage a horde of shock troops, which ultimately died from shooting, I think. They killed a demon spawn after kind of rotating to dance it around in the woods for a while. Then they killed a horde of blight. So that was by far their best performance. It just gives me a big threat. People do not want to be charged by a unit of Soul Reaver cavalry. Even a horde of orcs can potentially drop in one go to them. Even the really survivable units. There aren't that many units in the game that can somewhat reliably kill a decent-sized unit in one go. And if you're talking units with medium nerve, things like other cavalry or ogres, Soul Reavers can pretty reliably kill them in one go, if you're talking just the standard ogres, not the ones with higher nerve. Honour Guard are another unit in that category, so having two of those in the same army, I think, makes them a very potent fighting force. And I was actually only about the actual leaderboard, I can't remember, but it was only a very small number of kill points between me and the person who finished in second or first place trophy. He got the most kill points, and I was only slightly behind him, so I nearly got the most kill points at the event. And I would like to think that the Soul Reavers definitely did their part in accomplishing that end. So overall, I like the list. There are a couple of changes I'm thinking of, though. For the next tournament, I don't like to keep running the same list over and over, so I'll probably make some changes. The Soul Reavers may well stay in, because I think that's a really useful unit to have in there. There's a few things I want to tinker with. I want to maybe make some of my characters mounted, maybe look at putting a sorcerer back in, give them another try. A couple of things I'm considering taking out, for example, the Archer Horde, or something that could come out of the list, just to try something else, since they're irregular now. A couple of things I want to try out though, and I've got to make my decision tonight actually, because I have to submit my lists for the Franticon tournament by tonight. So I'm going to have to get on Army Builder and start tinkering with that at some point this evening. Right, King John says go Halfling Vamps. Yep, what does Brian have to say? Brian is talking to Bart in the chat about their tournament play. Right then, I think it's time to wrap this one up. So I'm going to disappear into the ether, and you can still look at me, the nice still image of me there in a lovely t-shirt. And don't forget, after you've watched this, leave a comment if you're not watching this live. Don't forget to do all that YouTube nonsense, liking the videos, subscribing and all that stuff that people are always demanding that you do. Usually at the start of the video you're told to like the video, because most people don't watch to the end, of course. So don't forget to check out all the links in the description, the social media, Twitter, Facebook group, if you want to keep up to date on all the stuff I'm working on and all the new videos and whatnot. And don't forget to give me all your life savings via Patreon or PayPal as well, because I know the only thing that keeps people going in their otherwise miserable lives is the possibility of watching one of my battle reports or one of my tournament reports that's just going to drag them up from the depths of their own personal hell and turn their life around, making them infinitely happier, like a beacon in the endless darkness and fog that is this world we live in. The one thing that's keeping humanity afloat, essentially, is my video content, so you should be financially supporting it as much as you can. That was a pretty good sell, I thought, there. If that doesn't generate a few extra backers, then I'll be very surprised. Right, time to wrap this one up. So, all that remains to be said is, good night out there, whatever you are.